Welcome, children, to the Silver Scream Fiends podcast. Prepare yourself for some killer kino, some spooky cinema, and plenty of tales of terror. Relax, grab a drink, make yourself at home, and listen to another evil episode. And hopefully, you'll make it out alive.
Oh baby, here we are deep in the month of spook. We're gonna talk about the worst movies possible. That killer kino, that spooky cinema.
Let's go, baby.
Let's fucking go. Everyone, welcome back to the Silver Scream Fiends podcast.
Ooh.
I am your host, Sam.
And I'm Blake.
And we are going to talk about the entire Halloween series. And it's probably going to be mostly painful. But I think I'm going to have a good time with it.
It'll start strong.
It will start strong. But before we get into that, I figure we could do our usual housekeeping. What have you recently done and watched?
Let's see. Well, I watched Halloween Kills, but we'll save that.
Yeah.
I watched Hubie Halloween, obviously. We had our watch party. That was fun. That's like honestly a movie I'm gonna watch every year because I enjoyed it that much.
Oh, me too. It's become a classic in this household.
And then I just been like kind of like popping on random horror movies. Like I watched Bride of Chucky. I rewatched Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark. I watched It Chapter 2. Like just it's literally like anything that's on TV or like if it's just like on streaming, I just throw it on.
Yeah, I feel that. There's just been so much out there this season. I'm trying to keep up with my Ghulathon watch list. So I've been mostly binging the Halloween movies. I did Puppet Master, which was fun. I did Mad Love, which is like an old Peter Lorre movie. I watched Caveat, which I really wish I could take all of that time back I spent watching it.
Yeah, I felt the same way when I watched it.
It was so unfortunate too because my manager kept saying, "Oh my God, you have to watch this movie and let me know what you think." And I'm like, "Okay," and I did, and it's like it plays off as like this weird psychological horror, but it really just completely falls flat. Like there's nothing, there's no action, there's no story.
The whole movie is just like build up and then nothing happens, and it's like okay.
Yeah, it should have been a short story. Like it had no business being a feature length film, and I hate it. Anyway. I've just been watching a bunch of shit, but if y'all follow me on Letterboxd, you could keep up with all that boring detail. But other than that, I say we just get into this shit.
Let's do it.
I'm excited. So I kind of want to start by asking you, like, when did you first get into the Halloween series?
I want to say, honestly, it was like, because I always say, like, I was a pretty late bloomer to like horror movies, which now obviously are like my main thing, but I didn't really start watching horror movies until I was probably like a teenager.
Mm-hmm.
And it was kind of just like I would just go to FYE and like buy whatever like cheap horror movies they had, and eventually I picked up Halloween like that and watched it like that.
Yeah, I would say my entry point was interesting because like you, I mean my dad would show me stuff when I was younger, but it wasn't until I was a fully bloomed adolescent that I began like imbibing all this horror. So I would say my entry point was interesting because I actually caught Resurrection once on TV randomly. I don't even remember where I was. I think it was my old apartment. And I saw like Busta Rhymes was in it. And I was like, oh shit, well, here we go. And I didn't really think anything of it because I didn't realize like the impact the series had on anything. So I was just like, oh, it's like a generic slasher movie. And then I went back, I want to say like 4, 5, 6 years ago and sat down and watched the first Halloween. And that's when I was like, oh, I actually see what people are talking about. And I watched them in a really weird order. Like I watched Resurrection. I watched the first one. Then I watched Season of the Witch. Then I watched 2. Then Halloween Kills. Then 2018. Then 4, 5,
reverse
6
order.
Yeah, 4, 5, 6, and then the 2 Rob Zombies. Which, like, you know what though? I've come to learn that it doesn't even matter because, like,
it really doesn't.
They have retconned the story 4 times.
Yeah.
in its entirety.
There's basically, it's borderline an anthology series, like they wanted it to be.
It is. Yeah, that was the original plan for it.
Yeah, like you can watch them in any order. It really doesn't matter.
Yeah, but I guess like, you know, I'll start with the first one, and I don't want to drone on it too long because what else do you say about it? Every fucking person has talked about the first Halloween. It's a work of art. John Carpenter hit an absolute home run, and the score's great. The atmosphere is great. Like, horror aside, it is just a fantastic film.
Mm-hmm.
Like I could see it being an art house study because it really captures everything so well. You got great contrast and lighting. You got good characters. You got good suspense. It's not overtly gory or anything, but it does keep you in suspense. And it's just, and of course, fucking Jamie Lee Curtis and Donald Pleasance. Like, you know, you got a dream team of people there.
Yeah, it's similar to like Texas Chainsaw Massacre in that, like, obviously now it's become such a huge cultural phenomenon, but like at the time it was just like an indie movie that kind of came out of nowhere.
Yeah, because Carpenter was really a nobody at that time. And him and Hill just like created this story and just fucking, and he did not know what it was going to become. I mean, like, no one ever does. And like 300 movies later, now we're talking about it.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, especially I want to give credit to the score, because how that man managed to hit two keys on his keyboard and make like one of the most culturally significant songs in this season and this genre of film is just still beyond me.
Especially because he only did the soundtrack because they like didn't have enough money to like get a real like orchestra or whatever. So he was just like, all right, fuck it, I'll do it.
And I think the practicality of it is what makes it so good, is like working with limited resources. And as long as you got the passion for it, like, it's gonna work. I think.
That's the story with just like so many classic horror movies. I find like much more than other genres. So many of like what's now considered the like gold standard for horror movies are movies that were made with duct tape and like safety pins, like just completely cobbled together, last minute stuff, like no budget at all. And now they're like some of the most memorable movies in the genre.
Yeah, and I think that's the reason why a lot of modern horror falls off for me, because everyone tries to make a grandiose production and sink millions of dollars into it and throw in CG and try to like really up the ante with their sound design and try to make it so atmospheric. But a lot of the time it just doesn't work because it's like you said, like it's lacking the charm of working with what you had. And like, I'm a practical guy all the way, you know? So I really appreciate that more, but I really like, I do wonder if John Carpenter did have the money at the time, like how different the production would be.
I don't think it would have been as good.
I don't think so
like
either.
You're saying, like so many of like the classic things or like scenes and stuff come out of like just the necessity of like not having a budget. And I feel like Halloween, especially, like look at the mask. It was like a William Shatner mask that they just like painted. And now it's like so iconic that with like a huge budget, it might have been some like sculpted, like crazy mask that might have not like hit as well as just like the plain white.
Yeah. Yeah, it is so crazy. It was a Shatner mask. I just saw an article recently of Shatner being like, what the fuck is this? Get this out of my face. I don't want this. And I was just like, that is so perfect.
Yeah, that sounds like what his reaction would be.
Yeah. So first one, great. Love it. Nothing really else to say. I mean, obviously, baseline story. If no one here knows what Halloween is about, back in 1963, we have a young Michael Myers. His older sister Judith is supposed to be babysitting him. She's making out with some dude, not paying attention to him. And Michael decides to just grab a knife and go upstairs and stab his sister to death. And he gets institutionalized. And child psychiatrist Sam Loomis, who's played by the wonderful Donald Pleasance throughout the whole series. Well, most
the reluctant
of the series.
Donald Pleasance. He was reluctant to take this role, from what I've heard. which is now probably like what most people will remember him for.
I was gonna say, because obviously he's great and everything, but like Halloween is really like was his stepping stone.
Yeah,
it's what he's known for. But yes, the reluctant Donald Pleasance is the child psychiatrist to Michael Myers. He gets institutionalized. We don't see this happen. So what happens is, like, in 1963, the murder happens, and then they kind of just cut to I believe it's 78 or something like that. Like,
that's when the movie came out, so I assume that's when.
Yeah, I assume that's like when they jump to.
Yeah, I might be wrong, but I think it just is like present day.
Yeah, and he ends up escaping, and he returns to his hometown in Haddonfield, starts to stalk and track down his sister Lori, who you don't actually know it's his sister until
the second movie.
Is it the second movie? Yeah, I was going to say, I think it's the second movie you find.
Well, that's why the 2018 one, since it retcons the second movie, they're not brother and sister in that.
Yeah, I was going to touch on that later because I find that so weird. Like, I know that the series has a history of retconning shit, but I found it interesting when I watched the 2018 one where that the group of kids are talking, they're walking and talking, and like, oh yeah, isn't that crazy boogeyman killer like the brother of Lori? And they're like, oh no, that's just some story they made up. And I'm like, wait, the fuck? So
yeah, it was an interesting choice.
But I think it has more of an impact that they're siblings.
Yeah, I don't hate it. I haven't seen many people like complain about that choice.
Yeah, I mean, either way, like, it's so in the second one, it's directly after, like at the end of the first one, Loomis comes in to save the day. He's got his gun. He shoots Michael a bunch of times, and Michael falls out the second story of the home. And like, that's literally where it picks up in the second movie.
Yeah, it's directly after.
Yeah, and which I love because, like, you know, I watch a lot of horror sequels that, you know, they'll take place sort of after, but there's like a disconnect because there's a gap. Like, this one is literally beat for beat right as soon as the first one ends. And Lori sustains a lot of injuries. She ends up at the hospital, the Haddonfield Hospital. And that's when Michael decides to go back on his rampage and chase her down. And Loomis, it's funny because, like, so the thing to note about Dr. Loomis in all these movies is, in the first one, he comes across as like a really concerned psychiatrist. He wants to help Michael. And as you get into the second movie, he starts to slip on his grip of sanity, and he starts like running around the town saying, Michael's evil, and people are like, what the fuck are you doing? And I love his descent into madness throughout the movies.
By the end of like the franchise, he's just like completely insane. And like his face is all, they like make him just the absolute craziest character. And watching the first one, he's like supposed to be like very professional, and like he is like the sane one who's like trying to warn everybody. And by the end, he's just completely insane.
He's basically just babbling at the end of the
I kind of like it though.
I do too. The only thing I will say, and obviously like we're gonna skip around here, but like on the topic of that, by the sixth movie, it sucks because like he basically died not long after that movie came out, and you could like see he's struggling. Like he's got a cane. He's barely speaking. When he does, it's like he's got a frog in his throat. And so like that was sad, but I do love the descent into madness. But back to the second one, I think as far as sequels go, yeah, and you know, just to say like, Michael goes around the hospital. He starts killing people. Once again, it's the same formula. It works. Why keep it simple? And so then they have like that showdown, and Loomis ends up blowing up the fucking hospital. And it's presumed that both Michael and Loomis die in the fire while Lori escapes, which we know is not true. But I think it's a really serviceable sequel. Like, I really don't have many problems. I'm a big fan. With it. Yeah,
I'm a big fan of Halloween 2. I like that they like made the decision to change the setting so much. I think that was smart. I kind of wish they did that more in this franchise because it really like sets the two movies apart. Like I like that this movie's in a hospital. It just is like a completely different kind of slasher because of that.
Yeah.
And I think this one, obviously they did have a much bigger budget, and it definitely shows in like the kills and the special effects and probably the hospital too, because they probably couldn't have afforded to shoot in a location like that for the first movie. So I think it's a really, really good sequel. I'm kind of upset that they did retcon it because it is a good movie. And I hope that people don't like skip it because of that.
Yeah, I think that would be a shame because I honestly like I stand this original pairing as like my canon because it makes more sense to me. I don't know.
Yeah, I did think it was a little weird that I get it. They wanted to like really go back to like basics, but I don't think that Halloween 2 was necessarily like enough of like a standout movie like some of the other ones in the franchise are, that they were like, you know what, let's just cut this out. But I guess maybe it's because they didn't want to do Michael dying in a fiery explosion twice. So they said, all right, we'll just get rid of that one too.
Yeah, I suppose that's fair. But regardless, it's a pretty good movie. I enjoy it.
Yeah.
And then of course we have Season of the Witch, which is the third one, and there's people that consider it the black sheep. Me personally, it's one of my favorites in the entire series, and it doesn't even include Michael Myers.
Yeah, I think a lot of people would agree that if it had just been called Season of the Witch and not been related to Halloween, it would be considered like a classic horror movie. Which now it's getting its like due respect now, but there are still people who hate it because of the lack of Michael Myers.
Yeah, it definitely has become a cult classic, and I love it simply because it ironically enough feels like the most Halloween themed movie in the series.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Because it directly, like the plot directly is about Halloween. Like it's Tom Atkins, the wonderful Tom Atkins, plays I believe he plays a doctor, and there's a guy who's like basically dying, and he's trying to investigate what happened, and his investigation takes him to this weird company that's producing Halloween masks called Silver Shamrock, and through that he's discovering like what these guys are doing. I think it's really weird. Don't they find like a piece of Stonehenge or something?
It ends up being like a pagan like Halloween ritual that they have part of like Stonehenge that they're using to like power their like evil deeds.
Yeah.
It's kind of I'm sure that this is part of the influence, but I definitely feel it's very like Twilight Zone-esque in that it's like borderline science fiction. You know, it's got like all these fantastical elements, and like it reminds me a lot of like it could be an episode of the Twilight Zone.
And it's also got like the mysterious men. Like in the beginning of the movie, you don't know who they're working for, and it is very reminiscent of like a true told sci-fi story.
It's much more like mystical than the Michael Myers story.
Yeah, and so with the inclusion of all that, they manufacture these sets of 3 masks, and they plan on distributing them to kids, and they put them on, and like so a recurring thing throughout the whole movie is they have this commercial that that's for Silver Shamrock, and the song will get stuck in your head immediately. It always
it's not
does
good, but it will get stuck.
It's not good, but it's effective. And so like the idea is they hypnotize the kids using this central database, and they send out these signals all across the country. And when the kids have the masks on, the masks start tightening up, and they essentially suffocate them, and they kill them. And you could see it, and
bugs and snakes and crawl out of them.
Yeah, and you could really see that shine in one of the scenes where there's this little boy with the pumpkin mask on his head, and you see him like trying to claw it off, and then his parents are like going fucking crazy. And
it's a great scene.
Yeah, in general, the movie's really good. I think that as a standalone, it's great. And even as an entry point, because as we said earlier, like the original plan for Halloween was they were trying to go for like an anthology series. And so it was supposed to be like an expanding universe. But obviously, like the litmus test failed. But what we got was a really effective standalone Halloween movie.
Yeah, I definitely understand people's frustrations like when it came out in 1982 of being like, what the fuck is this? Where's Michael Myers?
Right. Yeah.
Like they kind of made the mistake of doing it as the third one after doing 2 Michael Myers movies, which is kind of weird. And yeah, I think if they had just called this Season of the Witch, it would have been received very differently and probably would have its own sequels.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I think that puts it into perspective. Like we say now, oh, it's cool. Like there's no Laurie Strode, there's no Michael Myers. But yeah, I would imagine back then people were probably pissed.
Yeah, especially because there's only a year between the second movie and the third movie, so it's like it came right after, and it's billed as Halloween 3. So I get it, and it's not like now where movies come out and like every day for the weeks leading up to it, we're getting behind the scenes photos and like plot details and casting details. Like back then they didn't have that. So it was you kind of went into movies much more blind than we do now, where like you can anticipate it. So a lot of people probably went in and finished the movie and were like, what was that? Did they put the wrong movie on the projector?
Yeah. And then, of course, years later, sees the return of Michael Myers. I believe it was like late 80s. And we get a Halloween 4. And we got Michael Myers, except we don't have Laurie Strode, but we do have Laurie's daughter, Jamie, who ends up as the main protagonist of the film. And Michael's just on a hunt to kill his niece at this point. And something they do that's really cool in the movie, I think, is they kind of tie them together in this weird psychological way where like whatever Michael's doing, Jamie can actually experience it. And she like sees visions of it. And so for that movie and then for the following movie, Loomis is like trying to figure out like, okay, where is he? Well, you need to talk to me. And more so in the 5th one though. But in the 4th one, it more concentrates on like, because at this point we have a couple films under our belt. And so the film starts to focus on like the whole family, the family drama. Jamie gets bullied and she's a little girl, and she gets bullied in the beginning of the movie. Kids make fun of her like, oh, your uncle's the boogeyman. And so like there is like traumatic impact there already unfolding. And then of course we have Dr. Loomis, who is further descending into madness.
Yeah,
and he starts trying to chase Michael. And this
is the one where like they start to like disfigure his face, but it just looks like he like half his face is like not moisturized. Like he just looks like crusty. So he's just an insane crusty man running around, which is pretty great.
Yeah, because the justification of Michael surviving the fire from 2, like it makes sense, but then Loomis just somehow gets out and has crusty face. and I did always find that funny, but and this is cool because like one of my favorite scenes is like when like that truck and ambulance chase is happening and they're trying to catch him, and I really like that. All in all, really pretty solid movie. Has one of the best twists in the movies, because at the end of the movie, once they track down Michael, they also enlist like this small town mob to try to kill him. And then they cut back to the Myers house, and you see Jamie. She's in her like little clown costume, akin to how Michael was on the night of that killing, and she tries to kill her sister with scissors, and Loomis can see like the psychoticness running in the family, and he's like, no, and that must have been like the most fucked up thing to witness. It's like,
yeah, and this is kind of like the first one where you start to see them sowing the seeds of like some of the more supernatural things that will come in later. And I think it's pretty tastefully done in this one. This is another one of my favorite sequels, along with 2. A lot of people, myself included, really like the atmosphere of this one. This is one of the ones that feels very like fall.
Yes.
And especially like the opening credits. I know a lot of people really love those opening credits that are kind of like these big wide shots of like a Midwestern town with like Halloween decorations and scarecrows. And it's really cool. It's a great opening sequence.
Yeah, I would say Halloween 4 is pretty slept on. You know, I know people have mixed views on it. I personally really like it. It is after 4 that the series really starts to take a dive.
Yes, as does The Mask.
Yeah,
The Mask is not great in 4, but after 4, it like nosedives.
The Mask in 5, I could have made a better mask.
What I don't understand is why did they have so much trouble like replicating that mask? Like now you can go to like Spirit Halloween and there's 100 different versions of it. Like it's not like it's impossible to replicate, but they just like it's like they didn't even try.
and also the thing that annoys me is that in 1, the mask is obviously perfectly preserved because it's the first movie. And then there's damage in the second one.
Yeah, which the second one, that is the original mask, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. They like unearthed it from like somebody had it like in a closet or something, and it had gotten like all badly damaged. And it looks so different because the actor who plays Michael Myers changed and he had like a completely different shaped face. So like it's this damaged mask that's like on a different actor's face. So it just like really like warped it. And I think it looks cool in the second one. I like that mask.
Yeah, me too. And that's another quick thing to note is that almost like every iteration of Halloween has had a different Michael Myers. They change that often.
Yeah, he's not like Freddy where it's like one guy's kind of known. There's like every single movie is someone different. I think from Halloween 2018 to Halloween Kills might even be someone different. I might be wrong about that though.
That would just be asinine. Like why? I never understood that. I mean, I guess like you're kind of right. It doesn't really matter to me. I mean, as long as the mask is okay, which is fucking not in 5 and 6, but yeah, I guess it's like because he's hiding behind a mask that I guess it doesn't matter as much as someone like let's say Freddy Krueger, because obviously you could tell if it's not Robert Englund, but like I guess with Michael Myers it's different. But
yeah, I mean you have like Jason where like a lot of people love the Kane Hodder Jason versus like other versions of him, and it's basically all just in like the body language, which like Michael Myers doesn't really he's not very expressive. Yeah. So it kind of works with anyone. Whereas like people like the different things that the different actors is like Jason do. And obviously Freddy is a killer who talks. So you kind of have to have the same guy, but Michael Myers, I guess it's more like, as long as you're as like emotionless as possible, you could make it work.
Yeah. I also like, another thing before we jump to the 5th movie is like, so Michael's in a coma after the events of the second movie. And I just like, I also wonder was like, it just bothers me that the damage between Michael and the damage between Dr. Loomis is like, there's no, like, you know what I mean? There's no,
Dr. Loomis took all the damage to his brain and just drove him crazy.
Like Michael Myers, the fucking cursed undead serial killer, is comatose for 10 years, and Dr. Loomis just somehow escapes that.
Yeah, like, I guess that's why they kind of have to make him supernatural at some point, because the movies don't make sense otherwise. Like Jason and Freddy are kind of supernatural from the start, because Jason's like an undead little boy. Yeah, and Freddy obviously is like completely supernatural, but like the first 2 movies, Michael Myers is just a dude. And then like after that, they're like, okay, well, we have to figure out how to make this guy keep coming back so we can keep making these movies. So they eventually have to like introduce more like fantastical stuff, which they definitely do.
Yeah. And I would say the way they begin to introduce it in 4 is kind of how I wish they kept it. You could add more to that formula, but I think once it gets to 6 and we talk about the curse and
the Thorn stuff. Yeah.
Thorn. I was gonna say like what the name of what the cult is. Once you get into that stuff, it kind of falls flat for me. It makes sense, obviously, because like how you're right. How the fuck is he coming back to life all the time? But yeah,
I think like not to jump too ahead, but like I think that stuff is not a bad idea. I just don't think the execution was very good.
Yeah,
because like they could have potentially done something really cool with that and like introduced these like kind of pagan elements that they kind of played with in Halloween 3. But I just think the execution was just not very good. I kind of, when they like announced the 2018 one, I was kind of hoping that maybe it would go in that direction just because I'd like to see someone else like take a shot at that. But obviously they completely nixed all that stuff.
Yeah, I agree. Like to me, this movie resonates so well because it is about the psychological trauma within a family. And I think that you want to keep it as close to that source material as possible. And you don't want to stray into too many fantastical elements. So like in 4, just having Jamie, the niece, linked psychologically with Michael, like having a psychic link, to me, it was enough to prove like, okay, well, Michael's got some sort of curse going on. We don't need to really elaborate on that. And you're right.
Keeping
like
it subtle. Yeah.
Like keep it subtle. Like, and you're right. Like the execution like did not like later in the series just did not work.
Yeah. Dropped the ball.
Yeah. And so now we unfortunately get into 5, which is the Revenge of Michael Myers.
Just a great mask in this one as well.
Which was rushed into production to nobody's surprise. But and poor Mustafa Akkad, who's been basically the producer on the entire series until I'm pretty sure he did pass away, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, and so he was the producer on like almost all of these movies until like before Rob Zombie. Well, even I think he may have even.
Oh yeah. He was killed. He was killed in a terrorist attack in 2005.
Oh, okay. So it was before Zombie. Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, he was the producer on like all the fucking movies, which I would have to imagine seeing the legacy tarnish like that in real time must have really been.
Yeah.
But I mean, looking back,
you know what though? He kept making money on him. So.
Oh yeah, I'm
sure it wasn't too bad.
Oh, he was definitely, yeah, he was good. But so we have Halloween 5, which like, so it starts basically at the end of 4. He falls down a mine shaft after he gets shot by the townspeople. And of course, in like the biggest, I honestly laughed out loud when this happened. So in the beginning of the movie, the townspeople are shooting at him and they throw in that stick of dynamite, and Michael just somehow manages to sneak into a nearby creek through this mine shaft in a cave and just narrowly escape this dynamite. And he fucking. And I also laughed when he goes into the river and he's just floating. I'm like, what is going on here?
Where they lose the like intimidating factor to Michael Myers.
Like it literally,
he gets so goofy.
It just broke down barriers for me at that point. And you're right, he became way less intimidating.
Yeah.
And then he like once again falls in a coma, and then he stabs the hermit that was taking care of him in the cave, and then he returns to Haddonfield. And this one also focuses on Jamie again, but Jamie is now a mute in this one. And like I was saying earlier, Loomis has been trying to poke and prod her to get information out of her because he knows that they're psychically linked. And once Loomis finds out that Michael's returned, he's trying to get information out of her. And this is where we see Krusty Face really come into play. I mean, it looks like I just want to like touch it. I'm like, what is this? Like, it's just like raised textures. It looks like a maze.
Moisturize it.
It looks like a maze on his face. I don't know.
Here, this one's also when he's got the cane and the gloves. So he's like, they just really like, he's such like a caricature of himself. It's so great.
Yeah, he's just like, where is Michael? It's just over and over again. And it's like, dude, I know you want to get him, but this poor fucking girl is suffering from psychological trauma and she's a mute and you're like harassing her. I find it so funny. It's like, I understand why he's doing it, but my God, it's fucking. And so like this one just lacked all of the suspense of the series. Like it did not, like, even if some of the kills were slightly entertaining, it's just like I can't get past him not being intimidating. I can't get past that mask. The mask, it just doesn't do. It just looks like a dude went to Spirit Halloween and got a fucking knockoff mask.
I think it's probably the worst in the series.
It is. It absolutely is. And
it like looks like elongated. It's like weird. They like made his nose long. And it's funny because the poster shows the original mask. So like the poster doesn't even do justice to how ridiculous this mask looks.
Yeah. I will say though that one of the only redeeming qualities of the movie is like how Loomis tries to catch Michael, because he fucking baits him with Jamie, and he's and when they're in the house in Haddonfield, he's holding Jamie. He's like, "You want the girl, Michael?
At some point, Loomis is also a villain in the series.
Loomis is low key a fucking villain.
Loomis kind of terrorizes Haddonfield just as Michael Myers does.
Especially, you know, what makes me laugh too? Is it the second movie or the fourth movie where they're like in the middle of the street and they see this kid with a mask that's clearly not Ben Michael Tramer, Myers,
the boy with the blonde mask.
Yeah, and he fucking
explosion.
Gets fucking hit, and then
that is like one of the best scenes ever.
And they just completely disregard it, and they're like, "Oh, gotta get Michael."
Yeah, literally, Loomis is like, "Oh, it's not him. Never mind." Meanwhile, this kid is dying in the street.
Yeah, this kid just gets fucking wrecked.
Yeah, that's in Halloween 2, and it's a great scene.
I just had to mention that. So Loomis just goes completely batshit insane, and he's using Jamie as bait for Michael. He's like, "You want the girl, Michael?" and like lures him into this like atrium looking room, and there's a trap. He pulls down this chain, and there's like a net that comes down, and he tries to tranquilize him with a gun.
It's like a Scooby-Doo trap, pretty much. It's basically a Scooby-Doo ending.
It honestly is, but I did love the mini showdown they had. And obviously, like, the tranquilizer doesn't work, and and what I love is like they show like this is the start of like showing that mysterious man in black who comes back into the sixth movie, and then that's when you find out about Thorn and the whole cult shit. But what I absolutely love is Loomis like starts beating the shit out of him with this big wooden plank, and then Loomis suffers a stroke and falls on top of Michael, like in like in the most divine retribution ever. Just fucking falls over onto Michael. It was great.
Ridiculous ending for a ridiculous movie.
It really was. And at first I didn't realize what had happened. I was like, wait, is he stroking out right now? Like what is he doing? And then Michael gets locked up in a cell, and everyone's like, "Oh, you know, he's locked up. It's fine." And then, of course, like, he will never die because clearly there's many more movies. There's also like that explosion at the police station, and Jamie's told to like wait in the car, and obviously like it's just a fucking wreck, and you could tell Michael broke out, and then. Oh God! Do we have to talk about the sixth movie? Man,
you got to talk about Paul Rudd.
Okay, so I watched the sixth movie for the first time recently, and I was like, "Oh, dope! Paul Rudd's in this. Like, we got babyface Paul Rudd." And then And then I realized, I don't know, like, he must have taken really bad like acting advice from someone. He must have done a case study on a douchey neighbor or something, because he just comes across as, so for those that don't know, so obviously this takes place after 5, but I think it takes place a number of years after 5, right?
Yeah, I don't know what I don't know what the exact timeline is. The timeline of this whole franchise gets kind of screwy at some point.
It's so weird, yeah. So what ends up happening is, so we got years later, we cut to Jamie, who's now a teen, and she's giving birth. The problem is it's around this cult, and the man in black makes a return. And so the baby's basically going to be used for some sort of sacrifice.
Yeah.
And then you see, and then there's the introduction of Paul Rudd, who plays Tommy Doyle, who was from the first movie. Who
he's the kid that Laurie's babysitting.
Right. Exactly. And,
which also online, it says this takes place 6 years after the previous movie.
Oh, 6 years. Okay.
So Michael Myers is like 55 years old at this point.
Yeah, at this point, he getting up there. So, and the Paul Rudd performance just, so here's the thing, right? I would have expected something. They were obviously going for like, okay, I'm the survivor. I'm gonna stalk the whole Myers lineage. I'm gonna find out what's really going on. And because of this emotional and psychological trauma, it kind of he manifests in a different way. But it really just seemed like he was coming across as like a pretentious douchebag. It's
the idea. Some of the ideas in this movie are not bad. It's just the execution is not great. Like this late into this franchise, they have to keep it fresh somehow. And I think some of the cult stuff could have worked. Like I've seen other movies where things like this have worked. And like the whole idea of like having all these like cult elements to it. And like Michael Myers as truly like this supernatural like being is not a bad idea. And like the whole bringing Tommy Doyle back is like this kind of like conspiracy type character. It's not a bad idea. It's just not executed well at all.
Yeah, and I totally agree. I think that the idea is pretty cool because it seemed like a natural progression if you were going to do 13 more movies.
Right. But like they're running out of ideas at this point.
Yeah, but it's just he literally just comes across as like Phil Hartman doing an impression of a douchebag. He's just like, well, then, have you heard about Thorn? It's like, you're fucking weird. Like, this is not working for me. And then, of course, enters Dr. Loomis, who is basically on his last breath at this point. he is limping the entire movie. He cannot speak properly, and it really is a shame to watch him literally dying on screen because his final performance is overshadowed by a piss poor Paul Rudd performance.
Yeah, at least they got rid of the crusty face for this one, and they just gave him a beard to kind of cover it up.
Yeah, I do appreciate that. And so Jamie has this kid. Tommy comes across this kid. I think the kid ends up in like this fucking in like a storage unit in like a little locker, and he finds the kid, and he's like, I'm going to name you Steven. And I'm like, okay, you're fucking weird. And it's discovered like that because Tommy has nothing to do with the 30 hours in his day, but just look at the fucking cult shit. He discovers that it could tie back to Thorn, which is an ancient Druid curse. And he discovers that Steven is probably going to be the final sacrifice because one child from each tribe is chosen to bear the curse, and he's like, well, it's obviously Steven because he's the child of Jamie, which like,
again, not a bad idea. Yeah. It's kind of a cool idea on paper as a movie concept, but yeah. And meanwhile, Michael kills pretty much everyone close to them as usual, and this is just where I stopped caring. This is also This is the movie where we get the fat Michael Myers mask. The mask is very wide in this movie.
Yeah, that is true. So many times I wanted to like reach into the screen and
this is chubby Michael.
Just close it up. Wait, what do you do? It's gonna fall off, Michael. Stop. So then it goes back to, I think they go back to like a ward or something, and this is where I mentally checked out, honestly, because now they're dealing with the cult members, and I couldn't care less at this point. It's like, yeah, they're doing experiments or whatever, and Tommy, like, and then they try to like have this final showdown between Tommy and Michael, which you think is going to be really cool. And then Tommy just like tries to inject Michael with shit and knock him unconscious with a lead pipe. And I don't know. It just didn't really work for me.
Yeah.
I didn't really care for it. And then after that, they leave Smith's Grove. And the Michael mask is on the lab floor. And then you hear, which at first I didn't realize it was Loomis screaming at the end. Like I thought it was just someone else in the ward. But at the end of the movie, it's Loomis screaming, and it's presumed that he is killed because obviously, like, he dies in real life and he's no longer in the series until we get to Rob Zombie. But we will leave that for later.
Cross that bridge when we get there.
Yeah, that unfortunate bridge. But yeah, I just like the concept was there. And I think that, honestly, out of all of the Halloween movies, if they were to ever say, let's do a short series, I would actually like them to try 6. I would like them to try the cult shit in a format that would bode way better, because I think that there's some interesting concepts there.
Mm-hmm. It could have worked with someone else like handling it, I think. We've kind of seen it work. I mean, you kind of look at like the Fear Street movies kind of have that sort of element to it where it's like a slasher, but it's this bigger story about this curse. And so it's not impossible to pull that off.
Yeah, it could totally work. And I think that it just really suffers from its own legacy at this point. Because to me, it's like simplicity is best. And I know they're trying to change it up and keep it fresh. But man, if it works, just fucking leave it. Like it's no secret why my favorite ones are it's just Michael hacking and slashing. That's it. We don't need anything else.
Yep.
And like that runic, by the way, I just want to say before we move on, the symbol they use for Thorn, it is so fucking lazy to me.
Yeah.
It's literally just like, it's like a rectangle with a triangle. It's like,
yeah,
really? You couldn't have like drawn
cooler.
something out better than that?
Yeah. But again, it's just like another thing that feels just like tacked on to this movie as much of it does. So it's kind of fitting. It's fitting to have a lazy symbol.
It really is fitting. And now we get to H2O. Now, unfortunately, Donald Pleasance is dead, so there's no more of him. And they briefly touch on that in the beginning of H2O, I believe. I think people are talking and they're like, oh yeah, that used to be Samuel Loomis's house and he died and whatever. And so now we have the return of Laurie Strode a la Jamie Lee Curtis, which was so nice and refreshing after watching 5 and 6.
The first of 2 returns of Laurie Strode.
Yeah.
The other one being in 2018.
Right. So from what I understand, this is another retcon. So this one basically ignores everything that happened before it and just goes right to this.
Yes.
And it happens 20 years later, and it's supposed to act as a direct sequel to the first 2 movies. And then we obviously find out Laurie Strode faked her own death because, like, throughout the series, you see, oh no, Laurie Strode died in what was it, like a car accident? She claimed,
yeah, something weird, yeah,
yeah, and then obviously we find out she faked her death, which is brilliant because if you're trying to escape a fucking mass murderer like this, like that's probably the best thing to do. So I appreciated that. And then you find out that she had, and so like the other weird thing too is like obviously they retcon everything, but the continuity of like the kids that everyone has in this movie, like she has a son now who's played by Josh Hartnett, who
Josh Hartnett with an insane haircut.
With oh my god, I Listen, man, that dude need a barber. Like that.
His haircut's wild in this movie.
It is. Most of the haircuts are wild in this movie. like Lori, I don't really. It's whatever. But yeah, with Josh, it's like, what the fuck are you doing? So you can see that all this time has passed. Lori is trying to protect her son. Her son wants to go on this trip to, I believe it's like Yellowstone. She's like the head mistress of a private boarding school where her son also attends. And and the events of the murders 20 years ago still haunt her, obviously, and you can tell like she's starting to descend a little bit into alcoholism.
Yeah, and this one too, unlike the new ones, she is his sister in this one.
Yes,
they kept Halloween 2 in this one.
Yeah, and I really, and like I said, I think, to me, that like I want that to be the canon. Like I think,
I don't mind that.
Yeah, like I think because the mode, like especially when you get into Resurrection, because the beginning of that movie like is a direct tie to that sibling rivalry. But with H2O, I really love. I love that we have LL Cool J in this.
Yeah,
there was like that beautiful era in like late 90s, early 2000s, like this and Deep Blue Sea, where we just had LL Cool J and like all these horror cameos, and it's so great. He's like an aspiring fiction writer, and he's a security guard. So like he'll sit in his booth and he'll read the fanfic to his, I presume it's his wife or his girlfriend, and she's like, you gotta stop this shit. Get a real fucking job. But anyway, so Lori's son wants to take this class trip to, I forget if it's like Yellowstone or Yosemite or someplace like that. And she's afraid of letting him go and being alone on Halloween night because of the events that transpired. And Josh is lashing out like, no, you gotta fucking let me go. You gotta rip this cord out. Michael's dead, whatever. And of course, as we figure out soon enough, he is not dead.
Do they explain in this one how he's not dead? I don't remember.
I don't really know, because like I mentally checked out of these movies. Like I was like, I would see myself watching these movies and I'd be like, oh yeah, okay, another kill, nice, yeah, another kill. I wasn't really like paying attention.
Yeah, this deep into the series, you just accept it that he's okay, whatever. Michael's alive. I don't need to be explained.
Yeah, because H2O, we're already 7 movies into the series. Like, yeah, I don't really. It's really hard to take
this is 20. This is 20 years into the franchise, so at this point, fuck it, he's alive.
Yeah, fuck it. So then there's like this Halloween party that happens, and then of course, John and his friends, his friends mostly start like getting slowly killed, and. And Lori realizes, and another weird, like, intersecting plot line is Lori is seeing a guidance counselor that's like also at the school, and she because she faked her identity, she eventually reveals she is Laurie Strode. And I love that, like they're on the couch making out. She's like, yeah, by the way, I'm Laurie Strode. It's just like, all right, dope, put it in. Anyway, so
sick.
We have, yeah. And so Laurie's like, wait, fuck, my son is the same age I was when Michael first attacked. So that obviously is like, okay, there's like there's really no reasoning for it, but that was kind of their way to shoehorn in the reasoning for Michael coming back. It's like, yeah, oh yeah, it's been exactly 20 years. That's got to be the reason. And
which again, at this point in the franchise, you just accept it.
Yeah, I'm just like, all right, fuck me up. But and obviously, like so then between Laurie, John, and John's girlfriend, there's like this chase, and And I almost thought like when they get in the van and they try to leave the gate and Laurie comes out, it's like, what are you doing? Like, I thought something was gonna happen, like a knife was just gonna like fucking fling through the air or some shit. But then we have a a face-off between Laurie and Michael, which I think is pretty cool. I think it's probably one of the better face-offs in the series. And it eventually leads with a van getting stolen by Laurie. Like they think he's dead because she pushes him over a balcony. And so she steals the coroner van, which I think is great. I love that so much. And and he awakens in the back of the truck and trying to attack her, and she drives, and she repeatedly like drives the van into Michael and then just leaves down a steep hill. Laurie tumbles out, and now Michael's pinned between the van and a tree. And and this is great because you're convinced it's Michael, right? Like he's not talking. He's still kind of showing the evil in his eyes, but at the same time, he's trying to reach out to Laurie, like, "Oh, help me!" And she like begins to, and then grabs an axe and fucking decapitates him,
which is pretty sick.
Which I loved, right?
Yeah.
And so that movie ends, and we're like, oh, okay, like there's possibly no way
Michael Myers' head is gone. It is off of his body at this point in the canon. Which
I do want to say, it is actually really cool that there's a cameo from Janet Leigh, who is Jamie Lee Curtis's mother, who played Marion in Psycho. There's a cameo of her in H2O. I forget exactly who she plays. She was either like a teacher or a secretary or something, but I thought that was cool. Like I thought that was a cool nod to include her in there. Also,
a young Joseph Gordon-Levitt also in this movie.
Oh yeah, I totally forgot about that. Yeah, in the beginning of the movie, we have baby ass Joseph Gordon-Levitt. And I think he plays Will or something.
Yeah, he's like the neighbor
Jimmy or something. Yeah, and he goes into this house, and he like sees beer in the fridge. And he starts pocketing it. I thought actually his death was one of my favorite because that woman walks back in the house and just sees him with like the hockey skate like in his face, and I thought that was a great kill. Yeah. So now we have Resurrection,
which also H2O mask also unbelievably bad.
Yeah, I did.
This is the first mask with eyebrows, and Michael has a pig nose.
That is true.
20 years later, still can't get the mask right.
Yeah, and if I recall correctly, in Resurrection, he's sort of also have like that a little bit of the pig nose too.
Yep, still terrible.
Yeah. So now we have Resurrection, which immediately picks up right in the psych ward where Laurie Strode is, and you find out that she killed an innocent man. and so the justification for that is, well, Michael crushed the larynx of some worker or a paramedic and tricked Laurie into thinking it was Michael, which like fucking brilliant. Like
it is truly an exercise in screenwriting to figure out how to make that work.
That honestly, I liked that. I thought that was pretty fucking insane.
It's so ridiculous.
So she's riddled with guilt, and at first you see her, she's a mute. She's taking medication. She hasn't talked since the events of that night. But then you find out that it's all ruse. She's hiding pills in this little stuffed animal she has, and it was all an elaborate scheme to try to set up Michael, because she knew Michael was going to keep coming back for her. I mean, you'd have to assume at this point he's probably gonna keep trying to kill you. so then like it opens up with absolutely no hesitation. Michael tries to kill her again, and she leads him to the roof of the ward, and there's a trap there, and she gets Michael dangling by this giant pulley machine, and of course, in an act of absolute stupidity, and it's like, I understand because she's riddled with guilt and she didn't want to make the same mistake, but she goes to lean in and make sure that it is Michael and try to take off the mask, and of course he fucking grabs her, chokes her down, pushes her against the wall, and stabs her in the back. And the delivery of this line is great. Before she falls down, she just goes, "See you in hell," and kisses him on the lips and falls down. And that's all of Jamie Lee Curtis you see in this movie.
Which is by her demand. She did not want to do this movie, and she agreed to do it as long as they like fully killed off Laurie finally, because she just was against the idea of doing this movie.
Yeah, and honestly, I think that works because of the events of this movie, because basically what ends up happening is there's like this webcam show, Dangertainment, I believe they call it, and it's run by
2002.
Yeah, and it's run by the power couple of Busta Rhymes and Tyra Banks. and so they pick out a bunch of people to appear on this webcam show, and of course, because this is a great idea, they decide they're going to hold it in the old home of Michael Myers. And Busta Rhymes is Freddie, I believe his name is in the movie, is seeing nothing but dollar signs. He's like, "Yo, we're gonna be fucking rich," and that's just kind of his motivation for everything. And so you have this cast of people, and there's really, from what I understand, I don't think there's a connection to the Myers family. I think it's just a random group of college kids, right?
Yeah, I think they just gave up on that at this point.
Yeah, and which I actually like. Obviously, I don't think Resurrection was a great movie, but I think it was good that they did not try to continue the lineage, especially like after the events of H2O. It's like, how much further are we going with this? Like, Laurie's dead. Like, pretty much everyone in the family's fucking either dead or in witness protection. Like, we don't need to continue that. So we have this internet reality show going on, and you could already tell what's going to happen. One by one, they all end up dying. The main girl, Sarah, she's hesitant to actually join, even though she gets picked. But she ends up agreeing because her one friend eggs her on. And Freddie is very insistent on keeping her around, which by the way, when she goes to talk to Freddie in his apartment, I love that he's watching a nondescript kung fu movie that has a made up actor. Like I tried to look this up. I think it's like What Not Chun or something, like a ridiculous name. And he's like, "Oh shit, I gotta get back to this." Anyway, that does come into play later in the movie because he thinks he's a fucking martial artist. But anyway, we have this really stupid internet show, and there's actually this random guy who I think he's just somebody who has a crush on Sarah, and he found her like through the internet, and he becomes like this IT guru that ends up protecting her throughout the movie. I don't really know like what else beyond that, but then we have the whole rest of the cast trying to, like, they're starting to get creeped out, trying to look through the house for secrets. And then Freddie decides it'd be a great idea to dress up as Michael and try to scare them, and which there's like this great back and forth between him and the crew. They turn the cameras off, and he's like, "Listen, I'm trying to get a nest egg here. If you guys don't want your share, that's fine, but I'm trying to get a piece." And I was just like, all right, and I was almost absolutely convinced that there was going to be a scene where somebody mistook Freddie for Michael and stabbed him. Like, I was almost convinced of that. Because the last time I saw this movie was like 15 years ago, I think. So I didn't really remember much from it. But I was like, that would have been fucking funny. Like, imagine Busta Rhymes just getting stabbed. Like, I was almost certain of that.
Yeah, they should have done that.
And then we have Tyra Banks, who just to rewind a little bit. So there's this cameraman named Charlie who's setting up one of the cameras for the internet show. And we have Tyra Banks And this is great. She has her monitors up. She can see everything going on. She can see Charlie setting things up, and she's talking to him with a walkie-talkie. And Tyra Banks decides, I'm going to make the most decadent cup of, I don't know if it was supposed to be cappuccino, coffee, hot chocolate, but she decides this is going to be a perfect time to make the most decadent, elaborate cup of whatever. She's got like the coffee in the cup. She puts whipped cream. She's got like toasted chocolate. And then of course, in this time, Michael kills Charlie and has enough time to kill him, drag his body, and put the camera back in the spot with the tripod it was originally in for Tyra Banks to look at the camera and see that everything is fine. Because of fucking course, that's what happens. And so, yeah, I mean, again, it's one of those things where the concept is cool. Like Michael's stalking everyone one by one and killing them in this house. But it doesn't really do much for me. Like I didn't really think the kills were extraordinarily cool. I did like the whole aspect of, so Deckard is at this party and he's monitoring the show because he promised Sarah that he would do that. And one by one, people keep coming into the room during the party, like, "Oh, what's going on? Is this that new Dangertainment show?" And everyone at first thinks it's fake, right? Like that's kind of like it makes sense. They would think it's fake, like they're drunk and it's a show. And then you can quickly see, like, no, everyone is dying. Like especially when that one girl's I think her name was Jen, her head gets cut off clean. And it stumbles in front of the camera at the bottom of the stairs. And they're like, all right, this might not be a joke anymore. But yeah, I don't know. It didn't really do much for me. I do like it towards the end where Freddie comes back in when Sarah's having the showdown with Michael and they light shit on fire and he's like, "Trick or treat, motherfucker." And
it's so great. I remember there's one line in the trailer I can't remember which line it is, but Busta Rhymes says something like that, and it's just like I remember seeing it on TV when this movie was being like marketed, and it was just so great. This movie's terrible, but like it's such like a time capsule to 2002 that it's worth watching just for that.
Yeah. Oh yeah. This is the most early 2000s horror movie you can get.
It
like
is.
100%. You got like that fucking like a candid internet show. And
it's so of its time.
Yeah. The cheesy dialogue and the sexual innuendo and tension. And yeah, it is absolutely a product of the early 2000s. But yeah, and then, of course, at the end of it all, we have a fucking undead Michael just suddenly awakening, and that's when they cut to the end of the film, and that's it. And yeah, I definitely at this point, I appreciated like that nostalgia, but I was like,
yeah, you can understand why this is the last of like the original like canon that they ever made. Because like it had kind of just run its course by this point.
Yeah, it really. I won't even say it was a nice send off, but like I'm glad that that's where that part of the series ended.
Yeah,
because I'm like,
by the end of Resurrection, like the entire connection to the original movie is gone.
Yeah,
completely.
Yeah, it's literally just like, okay, Michael Myers. That was it.
I can understand why after this they went the reboot route instead of trying to like keep this up.
So speaking of which, that now brings us to Rob Zombie's takes on the Halloween series. So I've actually never seen the Rob Zombie ones. You know, I've watched a fair amount of zombie movies, but I'd known about its existence, but back then I wasn't like big into Halloween or horror. So I was like, yeah, whatever.
See, this came out when I was first getting into horror. So I saw this in theaters.
Oh, okay. So, so that's interesting. I will say, so I really enjoyed the first half of the movie. In the first, in the first zombie one, which is basically just an exact remake of the first Halloween, except what I think is really cool is that they show the harrowing transformation of Michael and how he had this fucked up childhood. He had an abusive not dad who was just a drunk. His mother was a stripper who obviously has to be played by Rob Zombie's wife. And so it's like, obviously, like there's legitimate family trauma there. It is the most Rob Zombie take on the series.
And this,
like it's gritty,
this was
it's dark.
in the heat of the age of gritty like origin stories, because this was around when all of the studios were doing these horror remakes, like Texas Chainsaw. Friday the 13th was a little bit later, but Halloween, like they did a lot of these at this time. And, I mean, I personally like this movie. It's very, like, again, I haven't watched it in a while, but I was 14 when it came out. So like I saw it and loved it when it first came out. And I don't know if I would still feel that way if I saw it now, but it was like kind of like, it was like a formational like horror movie for me. It was one of the first ones that I saw that I like understood on my own. So I like it. I like a lot of the choices that he made. Obviously, it's very Rob Zombie. All of his movies are. It's like, which I don't like hold against him. That's his thing. It's like saying a Tarantino movie is too Tarantino. It's like, yeah, because that's what you're watching. You're watching a Rob Zombie movie. Right. So I don't fault those things. And the mask finally looks good again in this movie, which is great.
Yes, I like the mask in this one.
And one thing I also like a lot about this movie is I think this like version of Michael when he's an adult is one of the scarier ones, because he got an actor who is like 7 feet tall to play him. So Michael is like a giant in this movie, which is different, but I like it.
Yes, I think this is easily the most intimidating Michael Myers.
Yeah.
Because he's fucking huge.
Yeah, I like how he kind of goes into why Michael wears a mask, and like I thought he made some good choices with the origins of things. If you're gonna give a backstory to this character, I thought he made choices that made sense.
Yeah, me too. And I think like as far as the first half of the movie and showing Sam Loomis trying to get into his head, who was played by the brilliant Malcolm McDowell. Mm-hmm. And I think
he did a good job. I like his Loomis.
He does a good job until we'll get to it. But that's not his fault. So yeah, we have Sam Loomis trying to get in the head of Michael, and at first Michael is willing to speak with him, but he's obsessed with hiding behind masks because he's ashamed of looking at himself and what has happened. And then he just becomes a complete mute. And then we see, like, before he gets released, he's just staring at Loomis. He just has not said anything in like 15 years, and that's when he begins his escape and starts killing everyone. And we have a cameo from Danny Trejo, and and I think I thought that I liked his inclusion, because it's like somebody who had been taking care of Michael for a while, but somebody that you knew was going to be caught in the bloodshed of it all.
Yeah, which I thought was a really good choice, because it's the perfect way to show that Michael is just like a blank slate. Like, he does not care that this character was like kind to him or whatever. He is just totally like a killing machine. Yeah,
it's like no hold barred. Like, this is it. Like, everyone is dead. So yeah, like I said, this pretty much, like, after the first half of the movie, this I would say like fairly beat for beat is a remake of the first one, because there's
I was just gonna say, also love to see Brad Dourif in this movie.
Yes, that is true. He plays what, the sheriff of
he's the sheriff. He's Sheriff Brackett.
Yeah. So I do really like that. A lot of it was just like a homage with his own take. You know, they had a lot of similar scenes, right down to two of Laurie's friends, the ones who the girl after sex is like, all right, go get me a beer. And he goes and the guy dies in the same way he dies in the first movie. And then he comes back with the fucking the bed sheet draped over him. And so I thought like, yeah, a lot of the choices in this movie were pretty solid. I think it did work pretty well. Mm-hmm. And it's, you know, it is one of those things though, where as much as I did enjoy it at times, it was difficult to remove yourself from the original just because of how faithful he was trying to remain. And so like, there's times where I was like, oh, I like it, but also like, I've kind of seen it before. Like it's a grittier take, but man, I like when you have such a strong first half of a movie, it's like you kind of wanted to see a little more of that. But all in all, overall, I liked it. Like, I like it too. Yeah.
I think that my main feelings toward this movie are that I think that Halloween was a weird one to get Rob Zombie to do the reboot for. I really wish they had got him to do the Texas Chainsaw Massacre reboot.
Oh, that
came out around this time.
Yeah.
Because I just feel like it's more fitting of his, like, I mean, his movies are basically just his own version of Texas Chainsaw Massacre and Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2. So obviously that's not his fault. It's whatever studio hired him to do a movie, but it would have been cool to see that. And so he kind of brings more of like a Texas Chainsaw feeling to this movie. It's much more brutal. It's much more violent than a lot of the other ones, especially the original, which has like very little blood in it at all. But I think he pulled it off. I like it. I think a lot of people my age that are horror fans are fond of it because of those like memories. So I think it's good. I think it gets a lot of hate, but I don't really agree with it.
Now, see, where the hate is perfectly justified is the follow-up.
Right.
Because, man, this is a case study of how not to do another movie. It just did. So, okay. So I guess we just get into it. So we have Laurie Strode at a sanitarium because she is completely fucked up from the events of the first movie because she shoots Michael in the first movie and in the second one, like, she was convinced he's dead, but she's just like in like this really psychotic state, dealing with her trauma. And this is where like this is one of the worst decisions I've seen someone make with a character in any movie. Rob Zombie decides he's going to turn Dr. Loomis into a pompous, arrogant, pretentious, greedy asshole.
Fame hungry.
Right. Like, because in the original movies, Dr. Loomis, above all, cares about ceasing Michael, like making sure that he is not killing. And yes, he does some questionable things and he's a little cuckoo, but he has a good heart and he just wants to make sure Michael's dead. This Loomis just cares about money and like he wants to write another book, and which he does. And it's just like, I can't, like, that pisses me off so much. Like, I know it's Rob Zombie. It was a very Rob Zombie thing to do. It was a very gritty thing to do, but it just, man, when you have a character like Loomis and you do that, it pisses me off. Like, I did not like that.
Yeah, I had read that very similar to what I said about Jamie Lee Curtis. Rob Zombie did not want to do this movie, but the studio was like, we're making a sequel no matter what. And he was like, well, if you're going to make it no matter what, then fine, I'll direct. Like, I don't think he wanted someone else to like ruin his vision. But so I think literally he was just like, fuck it, I'm going to make this movie just insane.
Yeah. And that's definitely what it is, because up until now, we haven't really had, obviously we've explored elements of the trauma in the Myers family and with Laurie Strode and all the relatives. And we've dealt with a few cult elements like in the fourth and the sixth movie. But Zombie decides we're just gonna completely flip the script, and we're gonna introduce the ghost of the mother and a younger Michael, and they're gonna be like the catalyst for all the events, and it's gonna take like a Friday the 13th approach, and we're gonna just have Michael we're gonna have Laurie hallucinate, and Michael's gonna act on the will and whim of his mother. And so like I thought that was interesting. There were times where the pacing of it felt off. Like it appeared to me he probably wanted to do something a little bit different, but it just got so skewed by the monotony of it and like how dark they were trying to make it.
Which this is also another movie that studio interference was a big thing. I know like Rob Zombie had a lot of trouble with the Weinsteins who produced this movie. So that should tell you a little bit about who he was dealing with.
Yeah.
So yeah, this movie was just like very troubled production. So I kind of like, I guess it's good that he was able to cobble something together. But I think if you were to ask Rob Zombie, he probably fucking hates this movie too.
And I don't blame him because it does honestly, like now that you tell me the studio was just going to do it and he just said, fuck it.
Yeah.
It really does seem that way. Like it just seems like they had a bunch of thoughts and ideas and they just taped them on a dartboard and just flung them at. It's like,
well, it's another case of where the end of the first Rob Zombie one, Laurie literally shoots Michael point blank in the head.
Yeah.
Like it's clearly over.
Yeah, and this one he's just like a fucking drifter, and he like what? Like I don't know. It's just so between the pompousness of Loomis, the absolute deranged nature of Laurie, like it's not even like, oh, she's dealing with trauma. She's like off her fucking rocker and like and like not in like a psychologically tormented way. She's just straight up brutal in this movie. And it's like, yeah, it's Zombie. They made her younger. She dealt with shit, but like threatening her therapist to just give her the fucking prescription pad and she's drinking herself into a coma. Like, I don't know. It just didn't really, it was an interesting take.
Yeah,
but
it's definitely interesting.
But the exploitation of it all, it really didn't work for me. And then Michael just the kills were so shallow in this one, and also making Michael grunt. Like I remember one of the earliest kills. It was in the hospital where Laurie was at, and Michael's killing one of the nurses, and he's grunting and making sounds, and off the bat I was like, no.
Yeah, like
no, don't do that.
The killer in this movie is barely Michael Myers. It even looks different later on in the movie. He wears like the hood and the big jacket and stuff, and like you could put this on and not even realize you're watching a Halloween movie.
Yeah, and I get like for the sake of my own sanity, we're just gonna cut the end here. So we have
on to 2018.
Yeah. So at the end of this movie, we have this showdown where Sheriff Brackett and everyone has come to this shed near the farm where Michael was at. And this is where Laurie is too. Laurie's been kidnapped, and she thinks she's being held down with the power of Michael and his mother and the younger version of him, and it's just like all hallucination. And Sam Loomis comes, which I love that the sheriff basically wants to shoot him in the fucking face for the death of Annie. And so Sam goes in the shed and whatever, and this is where, like, I already was done with this movie. This is where I was like, fuck this movie. Yeah. So Michael grabs Sam, pushes him out of the shed. Sam, I can't even hear what Loomis says because he mumbles this. So he says something, And Michael talks. Michael says, die.
Yeah.
And I'm like, and you see his face. I'm like, okay. So in 2 seconds, you managed to reverse everything that was good about Michael Myers. And it's like, I don't know. And then fucking Laurie walks out and gets shot. It's like,
yeah,
man.
I genuinely wouldn't be surprised if Rob Zombie had just had enough at that point and was just like, fuck this movie. I just want to end this. Just based on what I know about the production, it might have just been like a middle finger to this movie by its own director.
Yeah, it really, I really honestly believe that, because it felt how it that feels. Way. Yeah. And then at the end, like, and there was this theme of horses throughout the movie. So at the end, she's sitting in a psych ward, and her mother comes with the white horse, it's been a theme of the movie.
Yeah, it shows up a lot in the movie.
Right. And then and then she does like an evil smile. You know what it literally felt like? It literally felt like a fucking, like someone dropped a like a comic in Hot Topic by Jonah Vasquez, and it was him trying to be edgy, like
Michael the homicidal maniac.
Yeah. Which I used to read, by the way.
Yeah, me too.
But like, it was so fucking edgy. Like, it tried to be edgy, and I don't think he wanted to do this movie.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I don't know. And the whole like Angel Myers thing, I don't know. It's just all like it just all fell flat for me. I did not like this movie.
Yeah, I think it's obvious that their hearts were not in this movie.
Yeah. Okay. We're gonna disinfect ourselves and now move on to the 2018 Halloween.
So you watched this one after watching Halloween Kills.
So what's interesting is, like, I've seen clips of the 2018 one. Mm-hmm. But for whatever reason, I never sat down and watched it. And I was like, you know what? No, I'm sorry. I didn't watch Kills before. I did.
Oh, okay.
I almost did.
Okay. Because I was going to say, it would be very confusing to watch Kills first.
Yeah. But I watched them in the same day, I believe. No, I think that, like, within a day of each other. Anyway, so now we have the 2018 Halloween that says, hey, do you remember those 10 movies? Nope. Like, this is just completely different. Like, Laurie Strode is back, but she is not related to Michael.
Right.
And like, off the bat, I was kind of like, you know, I don't really know how I feel about that part. But then, like, once the movie starts to get going and you see that Laurie has this daughter, I think her name's Karen, and then she has a granddaughter, and she's removed from the family because she's so crazy wrapped up in Michael, and they don't want a part of her. And then her granddaughter is like, no, I want to reconnect with her. And then, like, once all that stuff starts happening, I was kind of like, all right, this is kind of cool. Like, this is the direction I like to see. And Laurie's trying to show them, like, the traps and the guns. And
she's become like militarized. Yes. Like, her house is all booby trapped. She's got, like, weapons all over the place. She's shown, like, in a shooting range, like shooting at mannequins and stuff.
Yeah, and I really love that. I think that
I thought that was a great idea.
I think that works, because now we're talking 40 years later. And at this point, Laurie is just, like, fucking wrecked. Like, she's but she channels that energy into something useful.
And since this is a sequel to the 78 one, the 78 one ends with Michael Myers' body gone. So Michael is not dead in this timeline. He never died and came back or had any kind of, like, ridiculous thing like that. So, like, he's locked up in a, like, psych ward, and Laurie's just, like, out there with the knowledge that Michael is not dead. So it makes sense to, like, have her be, like, ready, you know. It's not like it's this, like, crazy paranoid thing where she is worried about, like, a dead man coming back. He is alive. Like, it's a known fact that he's alive. So I thought that was like a really cool way to, like, show how, like, Laurie has kind of been dealing with it instead of changing her name and, like, running from it. She's, like, ready.
Yeah, I do respect that, actually, now that I think about it. And this one starts the directorial path of David Gordon Green, who did Pineapple Express before this. Man, it's something like there really is such a link between comedy and tragedy, because like Todd Phillips did Joker, David Gordon Green did this. It's like,
Yeah,
for
Jordan
some reason
Peele.
it works sometimes.
Yeah, you know what it is with a horror movie, especially compared to a comedy. I think why it works so much is like structurally they're very similar. It's just in one of them, the buildup is to a punchline that you want everybody to laugh, and one of them the buildup is to a kill or a scare or something like that. But like as far as the format of like writing a horror movie versus writing a comedy, I think there's a lot of similarities that make it like the transition's kind of easy.
I agree. I think that's what makes it shine. And so we have, because of course, we have a couple podcasters who try to visit Lori, and she at first wants no part of it, and then it's like, oh no, like, but it's Michael, and then she like ends up reconnecting with her daughter and her granddaughter, Allison. And this is kind of where shit ramps up, because now Michael is fucking on one of his usual rampages.
He's at it again.
Yeah, I know. I was like, that Michael Myers. So yeah, I would say, and like obviously, like there's a lot of similar characters in this. And I really like that, like with this and Kills, they keep going back to like what happened that night in 78 and
yeah,
and all
it's
this
like
stuff.
I said, since they decided to do away with the entire timeline that involves like the cult and all that stuff, they like went very back to human. There is nothing supernatural in this movie. They have completely like erased that from the franchise, and so they're doing. It's almost like, I think there's a lot of influence of like true crime kind of storytelling.
Yeah,
where it's truly just like a serial killer, and it's very like grounded, which I get. I mean, I think it was a good decision. We've seen the supernatural thing run its course. I would have liked to see somebody else maybe tackle that side of it, just because I do think with proper execution, it could have been good. But I understand like that they were like, you know what? Let's not do that for this one.
yeah, I'm down with that. Like I always say, man, if you keep it simple, it'll probably be effective.
Yeah, and I like the 2018 one a lot, but I don't. My one like complaint sort of is they really didn't do anything groundbreaking with this movie. It was just very a basic like Halloween movie, and it worked great as that. It's just they didn't. It felt like it lacked ambition a little bit.
Yeah, I will say though, I do like the twist of, so obviously since Dr. Loomis has been long dead, there's like not like his protege, but there's another doctor, Dr. Sartan, who you presume is also after Michael for good reasons, but he becomes obsessed with him and like almost wants to be him.
Yeah.
So
which was that was a pretty cool,
yeah,
like twist.
I really like that, because yeah, there's a scene where he's in the car, and then like Allison ends up in the car, but then he like fucking drags Michael in the car after a showdown, and like is going crazy, and he wants to be him, and he's trying to like put the mask on, and then that's when Michael, of course, pops out in traditional Michael fashion.
And I don't think it's hard to like make this conclusion, but I think a lot of the things that they have to say with this movie are kind of about our own culture's like obsession with serial killers and like true crime. Like you see that in a lot of the characters in this movie, which I thought was a pretty cool way to go about it. Like it felt very real, these characters and like the decisions they make, because we see this kind of stuff happen in real life.
Yeah, for sure. I do think it is something that like on my first watch of it, I I could kind of pick up on it, but yeah, after talking about it, they really did it in a good way. Like it felt,
it's like these people are not afraid of Michael Myers. A lot of them are fascinated by him, which look at how people feel about serial killers nowadays. A lot of people are not afraid of them. They're fascinated by them and they want to read books about them. And then there's people who take it too far, like the doctor in this, and become like obsessed with these serial killers. And so that was kind of a different angle that we haven't seen in this franchise. Like we had, other than maybe like a little bit in Resurrection, but I don't think we've seen them tackle like people not being scared of Michael Myers, but being like interested in him or like fascinated by him.
Yeah, it really is interesting, the whole true crime aspect and
so
how it does affect us.
Yeah. So while I don't think the movie was necessarily groundbreaking, it did bring new things to the franchise.
Yeah. And then of course we have that great showdown back at Laurie's house, and she's got like all the traps out and ends up knocking Michael into the basement, and there's like this fucking spike trap that locks him in, and once again we have fire.
Yep.
It's only like the fifth movie to do, but I mean at this point it's like, yeah, try to burn the fucker alive, right? Like that makes sense.
Yeah.
So but you can obviously hear like he breathes at the end of it, so he obviously survived.
Yeah. Well, it was great, that part at the very end where they're seeing the fire trucks go to her house, and like it's better than just being like, oh yeah, he survived the explosion, which we see in Halloween Kills, like why he survived the explosion. It wasn't just like, you know, he's fireproof. They kind of tried to make as much sense as it possibly can.
Yeah. And now we finally get to Halloween Kills.
Yes.
So this one is a mixed bag for me.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I gave it a 3.5 out of 5. I don't want to say, like, there's people out there saying it's one of the worst ones in the franchise. I obviously do not agree with that.
I don't agree with that.
Is it in my top 3? No. But is it in my bottom 3? Absolutely not.
Yeah, I think that, like, obviously, first of all, the kills in this one are actually some of my favorite in the whole series.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah,
I think like out the gate, like, so obviously this picks up right from 2018.
Yeah, just like the original Halloween 2.
Yeah, which I thought was really cool. And the firemen are trying to rescue him, and they take him out, and just they waste no time. Michael starts executing the entire fire squad,
which is one of the coolest scenes in this franchise, no doubt. That was so, like, that was the first time we've seen like basically a Michael Myers like fight scene. You know, it wasn't just a kill, it was like a group of people versus Michael Myers, and that was really cool. I thought they executed it really well. Yeah,
which comes about again later in the film with the angry town. But so another thing I really love about this movie is out the gate they flash back to the events of 1978,
which I loved. That sequence was awesome.
Yeah, I think that they did a really good job of, and whoever they got to play Loomis actually did a pretty decent job.
Yeah,
like it was. If you look at it,
I've been seeing online. Yeah, I've been seeing online that they actually used like prosthetics. It wasn't like CG. Because now, like, everything is like, you know, we got to have this dead actor back in this as a CGI character that just looks weird.
Yeah.
And you can tell that they did practical effects because it looks really good.
Yeah, I think that it was, the way they executed it was really cool. And if you're a fan of the series, then I think it's something you would appreciate.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's like, oh, cool. They actually, and it wasn't like a dog shit impression. Like the guy who voiced him, I think, was different from the guy who actually played him. Like they got a random actor to play him physically, and then they got somebody else to impersonate his lines, and it worked because I was like, oh shit, that actually sounds like Loomis.
Yeah, I think that I disagree with anybody I've seen criticizing that, because I thought it was really tastefully done and really well done.
Yeah, no, I really. when I first saw what they were doing, I was like, oh no, is it gonna suck? I was like, no, that's cool.
Yeah, it was good. It was short. It was to the point, and it didn't they didn't try to make him a character in the rest of the movie. It was just in those scenes. So I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah. So the movie shoots to this bar scene where everyone's celebrating the 40th anniversary of Michael's arrest. And we have Tommy Doyle once again, but who's played by Anthony Michael Hall, which like so many times I had Photoshop open and I'm like, what could I put in the Breakfast Club as a quote for Halloween Kills?
Yeah.
But yeah, it was interesting because like at first I was like, fuck that casting. But I think ended up working in a really weird way because he's a very angry person. And and after all this time, like he's in the bar with all the survivors and he's telling the story of what happened that night, like beware the boogeyman and don't worry, there's plenty of awful dialogue to come.
Yeah.
But then like after all that happens, they kind of go back to like the events of the first one where Laurie's being transported to the hospital. They see like the fire trucks passing, Laurie's screaming, no, don't save him. And then Laurie is basically in the hospital for pretty much the whole movie.
Yeah, that was one of my many big complaints about this movie is that Laurie was kind of like relegated to a side character. And I don't really know why they did that. It was like the first one was so Laurie centric and like very clearly people liked that and wanted to see more of that. And I don't know. I can see what they were going for, trying to like expand it beyond Laurie, but I thought it was too like abrupt.
Yeah. And I think honestly, to me, and you could have gotten away with this by just having a short stint in the hospital, but I think they were trying to set up for like Frank, who was the deputy that night in 78, who also ends up in the hospital, and him and Laurie kind of have that talk, and Frank's like explaining what really happened that night. And so like I think it was a stupid way to shoehorn in that subplot, but they really should not have kept her in the hospital that whole time.
Yeah, it just was like I said, it was just the transition from Laurie as such a main character to such a side character was just so abrupt that I think it was a little bit jarring to do it that way.
Yeah, and so this movie becomes an angry mob movie. So like once they know that Michael is out again to kill,
yeah,
Tommy Doyle gets the town together, and this is where we start to see the idiocracy of mob mentality come into play. Because they all
this is the second mob in the Halloween franchise, because Halloween 4 also had a mob versus Michael Myers.
Yeah. Yeah, that was definitely like that. The Halloween 4 mob was definitely small. Like this one pretty much encompassed like half of the town, which I thought was crazy.
Yeah.
Like and you know, one other thing that was cool, I like the nod to Season of the Witch in this. With the 3 masks. I thought that was pretty cool.
It was
with the kids on the playground and shit.
It was something I wish they didn't spoil in the trailer, but what are you gonna do?
Yeah, but we're talking about Universal. Like that's all they fucking do is they spoil their movies.
Yeah.
So the whole mob thing I would have maybe been okay with more, but just the whole evil dies tonight rhetoric, like
it was so bad. I mean, again, I get what they were going for. It clearly was trying to say something about the world as it is right now, and I get it. It's just it was so, I don't know. It was like almost too on the nose. I feel like they didn't. Whereas the first one was like pretty good with kind of like saying things about certain issues. This one, I think they took it too far, and it was just like so. It lacked subtlety so much that it was just like cringy.
Yeah, and I also fucking and again, like you said, I know what they were going for, but I absolutely fucking hated when the angry mob starts chasing that that patient who was also in the same mental hospital as Michael, and they think it's Michael, and they're fucking, which really quick side note, when they're going up the stairs chasing him, and the sheriff the sheriff's face is my favorite. He's like, no. But then they chase this poor fucking guy, they trap him in a room, and Karen, Laurie's daughter, who, by the way, I didn't mention earlier, but is played by Judy Greer, who I think does a great job. She like traps him in to protect him, and then he ends up jumping out the window and dying. And then it's only then where the mob's like, oh, maybe that wasn't Michael. Like, yeah, no fucking shit. So yeah, I don't know. Like, it's like you said, I know what they were going for, and somebody on Twitter the other day tried to like give their opinion on everything going on, and so basically the tweet was something like, so and you may have seen this too. It was something like, well, if you really think about it, look at the events that transpired. Like, Dr. Loomis spent all this time psychotically wrapped up in this story of Michael Myers, trying to thwart him and bring justice, and throughout the years his mental state dwindled to the point where he was just incoherent, and he only had one mission in mind, was to get Michael and to kill evil. And throughout the series, you hear Loomis say multiple times, like, he is true evil. You look at his eyes, there is nothing. He is evil. He must be stopped. And so what the guy in the tweet was trying to say was like, the town of Haddonfield manifested the energy of Loomis's mission and psychotic descent, and that's what happened. I'm like, yeah, but no.
Yeah,
like, it didn't really, but didn't translate well.
Yeah, something I've seen a lot with people defending this movie. And again, I don't think either of us hated this movie. We're just able to discuss the fact that it is a flawed movie.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that people don't want to admit that. So they're like layering on all these meanings that are not at all present in the movie just to kind of like justify some of the flaws.
Yeah.
And it's like, I think the movie was just kind of flawed. Like, the pacing was bad.
The editing was terrible in this movie.
Yeah.
I couldn't tell. I couldn't tell which parts I was supposed to feel suspense and which parts I was supposed to laugh.
Right, because you would go from a scene that was supposed to be suspenseful and just like dead stop into a scene that is not at all. Yep. Even like that, the opening, like you get that great flashback scene, and then it goes straight to the bar scene, which is like totally not. The bar scene is a long, dialogue heavy scene that totally like kills the pace immediately. That's the beginning of the movie.
Yeah.
And the pacing is already getting weird. So it's, yeah, I see what you mean. Like you don't really know, like, what scenes am I even supposed to anticipate Michael showing up? And like that could have been utilized to scare you, but it's not.
Yeah, no. So that totally just fell flat for me. And like, there's like I said, there's redeeming parts. Like I love the kills in this one.
Right.
Love the continuity. Of course, Carpenter with the score. Mm-hmm. I think had one of the better soundtracks, and but yeah, no, obviously, like there's glaring flaws in this one,
right. And especially because I felt the 2018 one was really good. This felt like a step down from that. To me,
it very much felt like the middle movie because because there's going to be a final one called Halloween Ends, and it basically, this just felt like the filler movie.
Mm-hmm. It is a lot of filler, a lot of introducing these new characters. Like, clearly these characters are some of them are gonna be important moving into the third movie, and so it was like a lot of setting up and filling time till we get to the third one. And then maybe when the third one comes out, we'll be able to like look at this trilogy a little differently and feel a little bit better about Halloween Kills. But on the initial reaction, I think it just came off as very, very flawed.
Yeah. And I do like when Karen stabs him with the pitchfork and takes the mask and lures him outside.
Head,
yeah. I remember too. I was watching it with my dad, and he's like, oh my God, are we gonna see Michael's face? And I was just like, probably not. Relax. And then like that's where he's confronted by this big angry mob headed by Tommy, and then there's this big fight scene. But of course, like at first you think Michael, oh my God, is there a chance Michael is gonna die? And then obviously like he just gets right back up and destroys them all.
Yeah, which was cool. I thought that sequence was really cool. I liked how it was like basically the entire sequence was done in close-ups and like slow motion shots. That was pretty cool and something a little bit different. So
yeah,
I did like that scene.
And I like at the very end where Karen like goes into the bedroom and Michael just straight up stabs her. Like it, like, and it pretty much doesn't even leave question. Like she's dead. Like,
Yeah,
she's not living through that. Like there's no fucking way. And so the final shot is Laurie staring out of the hospital room while Michael stares out the window, which of course is like been a recurring theme in the entire series, which I thought was like a nice way to end it. Because it's like we have a cool twist. We have the death of her daughter, and then it'll set up for the events of hopefully a much more saving grace ending to the trilogy.
That's what I'm hoping for. It's hard when it's so clearly going to be a very streamlined trilogy. Like this movie takes place directly after the 2018 one, so like having a year wait in between, I think is going to hurt this movie. Whereas when we finally get the full collection and we can watch all three movies at the same time, I might feel differently, but we'll see.
Yeah. I mean, it really is one of those things where I as a whole, I really enjoy the Halloween series. I think it is definitely gotta be in my top 3 as far as like mainstream slashers go. And despite any weaknesses it has, you can't deny that for the most part there's cool kills, there's always good atmosphere, there's always a good score. And
this one also does have a great mask, which is always an important factor in these movies.
Oh yeah,
so many of them have had bad masks. Yeah,
and so I think that it really, the series as a whole is very strong. There's weak parts, but I think that at the end of the day, the whole mission statement of Halloween is like a perfect balance of psychological dread and slasher, and I think that most of the movies manage to capture that, and that's what makes it good to me.
Yeah, and I do think this one did the character of Michael Myers justice. This went back to the Michael Myers as this like scary, emotionless killer, which some of the other ones, like I said, he gets goofy in some of them, and then so I do appreciate that. I think in the grand scheme of the franchise, Halloween Kills is, like I said, it's not in the bottom 3. I think it's ridiculous for people to say it's one of the worst movies in the franchise. I don't think they've watched the whole franchise.
Yeah, I would be willing to bet they've never seen 5 or 6.
So I'm just because it's a little bit flawed, it's not going to kill my excitement for the rest of for the end of this trilogy. And I'm still grateful that we just get to see Halloween movies that are actually well made this late into this franchise's existence.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, this is good fun, and I'm glad that Halloween and horror in general has such a tight-knit community that these companies actually have half a brain and see that, and they're actually, I mean, think about it, man. Like we've had the resurrection of so many cool things. Like we've had Halloween with this movie, and then we'll have Ends. We have a new Slumber Party Massacre.
Yeah. Which I still have yet to watch, but
I haven't seen it either. But I'm going to watch it soon.
I've heard it's good.
We have a new Chucky series,
which I've also heard is great.
Which, by the way, I watched the first episode and it's phenomenal.
Yeah, I gotta watch it.
Yeah, because you have Mancini back on the production, and you have the original voice of Chucky. So like,
Brad Dourif, baby.
Brad Dourif, yeah, exactly.
Love Brad Dourif.
And so that's great. And then and then they're even continuing Puppet Master, and and they did a new Candyman. So like, it's cool that we just have like this little resurgence of horror. And it's like, it's cool too, because at the end of the day, no matter how shitty these horror sequels may be, they're fun. Like they like this whole genre is just fun. Like you could just unwind and be like, man, those are some cool kills, and like the story doesn't even fucking matter, and I hate these characters, but like it's just fun. Yeah. Like I'm glad we have this.
Yeah, I agree. I think horror is bigger than it's ever been right now, and because of that, we're getting a lot of really great stuff. And so if, you know, one movie comes out that's a little bit divisive, I don't think that's the worst thing in the world.
No, and it'll get people talking, and I think it would increase the hype for Halloween Ends.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, Halloween Kills made a fucking ton of money, so it's still going strong.
Oh yeah. So before we wrap this up, I want to ask you. So once Halloween Ends comes out, what do you think is in store for the future of the series?
Honestly, I mean, like I always say whenever we talk about franchises and sequels, as long as these movies are going to keep making money, they're going to find a way to keep making them. And these movies have made a ton of money. So I don't know what they're going to do. It will be interesting to see. I mean, there's a lot of possibilities, you know, like I said, I mean, the original plan was to make Halloween movies that did not feature Michael Myers. I don't know if they'll do that, but maybe they'll make a series or something. I don't know.
Yeah, I was actually kind of thinking that they'll probably greenlight an anthology series, because I think that would almost be the next natural progression, because like we've had so many timelines of Michael at this point that it's like, what do you even do? Like, it has been like, there's been original, and then there was the offshoot, and then there was the pickup from the original, then there was a reboot, then there was a retcon, then there was another retcon. So it's like, at this point, I could see them just saying fuck it and doing like a show where it doesn't focus on Michael. And I would like that.
That would be great. I think it'd be a good idea, but
and they better cast Tom Atkins.
Yeah, so I'd be very surprised if Halloween Ends is the actual end.
No, I don't. I do not think it's the end.
I don't think anybody thinks. I don't think anybody trusts them to.
There's no way. How, like, when you think of horror, Halloween has been like one of the longest standing consistent series out there. Like, they're not just gonna kill it.
Right. Michael is on the Mount Rushmore of horror. There's no doubt about that. So I don't foresee him going away, especially with these movies being so popular and making so much money.
Yeah. Now my question is, where's the next Evil Bong movie? which honestly, I think I heard they're doing a spinoff of.
I know of that movie. I've never watched it.
Well, that's our next watch party.
Okay.
Oh, fuck yeah. Yeah. I mean, man, I could go on and on about the series, because I love most of it. I hate some of it, but at the end of the day, it's good, dirty fun. Mm-hmm. It's just such a good time.
Right. You'll never be bored with the franchise. You know, like some of the movies are not great, but none of them are boring, in my opinion.
Yeah, as idiotic as shit gets, like even with the second zombie one, it certainly wasn't boring. Like it was just crazy as fuck.
Right.
But yeah, man. This is one I have wanted to record for a while. I'm glad we finally did it. It's funny because like when we got together and I was looking at our archives of episodes, I'm like, how have we never done? Because we did a Carpenter one, but we never like did an actual Halloween episode.
Yeah, there's so many topics that I'm like, have we done this yet? Why do I feel like we've done it? And then I'm like, I don't think we've done it.
Yeah. So yeah, that's the Halloween series. I'm sorry y'all had to listen to us talk about 6 and 2009, but like, I guess
it's okay because Evil dies tonight.
Evil do be dying tonight, which actually is my name in the Zoom call. Anyway, yeah, that's gonna wrap it here, I believe. Next week on the 27th, which is a Wednesday, we'll be having our watch party of The Exorcist 3, which I'm really excited for, because
me
like
too.
we started to watch it when we went to the beach house, and then we turned it off, and I was like, shit, I want to watch it, and now we'll get to it.
Yeah, it's great. I'm excited to watch it again. I haven't seen it in a couple of years.
Now we'll get to see Fabio in all his glory.
Yeah, and Brad Dourif again.
And Brad Dourif, yeah. So we'll be doing that on the 27th. We'll aim for about 8:00, and I have links to our Discord, so if you want to join us, feel free. And I have some other fun stuff coming out too. I'll be having a small review of Brain Damage coming out soon. Some other stuff too, and yeah. And with that, that's all we can really say for now about Halloween. And hopefully, Ends will be a really satisfying conclusion to that trilogy.
And Evil Dies Tonight.
And Evil Do Be Dead.
Just a reminder.
Just in case. So anyway, this has been the Silver Screen Fiends podcast. I've been Sam.
I'm Blake.
And we are signing the fuck off.
Evil Dies Tonight.
Evil Do Be Dead. Tommy Doyle rules.
Yep.
Free Loomis.
Free my man Loomis.